Hello and welcome to another session in the studio. Today we are joined by Barry Hayward, Chief Commercial Officer at South Staffordshire Plc. A very warm welcome to you today.
And good morning to you, Jess.
It is lovely to have you here. You have held many leadership roles across the water sector over many years, but you actually started in this role in January this year.
I did. It has been a whirlwind 5 months.
What excited you most about this role and how's it going?
Oh, it's great questions. So I'm sure the board will tell you that I'm doing a fabulous job. Time will tell. But I think South Staffordshire has got an exciting future. My background has been in water for 20 plus years. And I have moved between the regulated and unregulated space probably more times than most. I like to think that I'm the bane of Ofwat because they never really know which role I'm going to pop up in next. South Staff's has got such a great portfolio of businesses where the unregulated space is truly partnering to the industry. And I think that's what's quite exciting for me. I think we can definitely advance that and we can make them real partners far wider than just the water companies and WASCs that we currently serve, as well as still being able to deliver for customers, which was why I joined the industry in the first place.
What other challenges, you talked a little bit about juggling that deregulated and regulated. What other challenges do you foresee or are you already experiencing in the sector, and how do you see yourself and South Staffs overcoming them?
I think no matter what we do in this sector at the moment, we can't not nod to probably what I've been very vocal about, saying is a failure of regulation to manage the CSO problem. So even though I don't own a sewer network, my entire CMEX score is impacted by the fact that other people do. I did come from a WASC, and I think we have done as an industry, and Ofwat have done amazing things for many, many years with great investment, with great customer focus and great advancements in technology. What they have failed to do, and I think it's probably been a circumstance of government, is keep pace with the fact that they can't just count the pennies in this 5-year period. And I'd probably have a similar comment with Ofgem. They've lost their sight of the fact that they are managing stewards of 100-year assets, and that long-term vision isn't clear. So we're making short-term decisions. So I'd love to be able to use my partners who are more active in that space and bring a real commercial edge to showing and showcasing what we could do with these assets over the lifetime and make better investment decisions. I do think it's both the challenge, which gets over the issue that we're spending the wrong money, in my view, on CSOs. So poorly performing water companies should be dealt with, but really focus into what do customers need and how are we going to deliver for them and for my son in his generation when that comes round, not just what the next 5-year tick box looks like within a government cycle. So I do think that's the biggest challenge, and I do think we could be a part of that, and I'm quite excited to get to work in doing that. And
you've got such a niche set of experience, having juggled that domain. What learnings have you taken from your experience over the years that you're looking forward to sharing?
I think anyone who's worked in the regulated sector will know that the differences between that and the unregulated sector or the commercial sector, because I actually think the commercial businesses are more regulated than the water companies because of the markets they work in. So it's a bit of a misnomer in my mind. But certainly everyone who's worked in both will recognise that the water companies and the water sector are about surety and low risk. So that's often mistaken for being cumbersome and slow. And that's a right view when if someone said to you, Jess, I'm going to build a network and I'm going to put yogurt through 15 kilometres of pipe and I'm going to get it to your house. And every time that you turn this thing, which I'm going to give you, or I might not give you and you could swap out and anybody could fiddle with, it's going to come out in food grade quality. You would say, oh, shut up, Barry, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But we do it for water. And we've got to recognise that is a really complex, risky business. So we shouldn't expect water companies to be great at innovation. Whereas I think commercial businesses should be all about innovation, and they should manage risk alongside those companies and actually like as a partner with them. So understanding that and driving that synergy. And I think where I've been able to kind of move between the two, I think has been very much my previous owner had a large multinational conglomerate. So it was very much, well, this isn't working for us, but let's start a business over here and make it really successful, not being part of the water company, but being in the sector. So they got flip-flopped quite a bit, as I've said, and I think that view has to be clear, though. Anyone, especially I think for anyone listening to this podcast, it's not that they're slow, it is not that they don't care, but their responsibilities mean you're only going to get one thing, and really appreciating that makes a difference.
You mentioned your son briefly there. How old is he?
He's now 8, incredibly.
8?
And 9 in a few weeks, which is, I got told yesterday, the most important thing that's going to happen this year. Is his birthday party in just over 3.5 weeks.
Oh my goodness. What's planned for the party?
Laser Quest.
Yes, Laser Quest. Oh, it's
pizza.
Already going to be a hit.
I did say it'll be fine, but
it will be fine.
Coming into 9, that seems to be a problem.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow. So he's obviously a long way off, embarking on career path. But if he was to turn to you and say, years from now, I'm going into the water sector, would you be excited for him?
Wow, now that's a good question. That's the second good question today. I might have to watch you, Jess. I think yes. I think the sector does an amazing amount of good. As I've said, they're environmental stewards, and they do get their asset stewardship responsibilities and take it really seriously. I think that when I joined as a gay man 20 plus years ago, I came from financial services where, in fairness, whilst it wasn't really discussed at that time, it was acceptable to be gay in financial services because they really didn't care as long as you made money. I think when I joined an engineering-led industry, that was not the case. And my son, who is autistic, will struggle if he joins now. So I think part of our job is to have those conversations, and I wouldn't be worried about him joining the sector, but I would probably, where we are today, worry about how accepting the sector would be of him. So I do think it's our role as leaders to also champion that diversity, and I'm a big open supporter of just having that conversation. So I think he would be welcome, and I would love him to come. It
is June, it is Pride Month. You talk about being an openly gay man 20 years ago. I think you were one of the first, if not the first, openly gay water director in your sector. Do you mind sharing a bit about your experiences and what it was like navigating that field at that time?
It was difficult because anyone that's in this space, anyone who thinks about this space, and it's a bit like the question of what does pride mean, visibility and all that kind of stuff aside, it is interesting to recognise, or important, probably more than interesting, that Stonewall did some stats that backed this up a few years ago. Over half of everyone in the LGBTQ plus community will have depression in their lifetime. That comes from, as it did for me when it struck for me many years ago, from years of passively believing that what you are and what you're doing is wrong. And even if you've got a great strength of character, and I was very clear from the start that it was not something that I was going to budge on, it didn't stop that internalized shame from hitting. And I think anyone who is trying to be an ally and engage with this month must recognise that the journey you go on is going to be different for everybody. So it was difficult, and I had a lot of difficult conversations. I think that has moved on more than anyone could possibly imagine in 20 years, to a point now when it just wouldn't be a thing people would recognise if you're starting in the career. But I do think anyone who is working with or leading someone in that space has to recognise that they are an individual and they don't want to be treated any differently, but they come with some things that societally we've not dealt with, will be the next challenge, I think, for leadership in terms of recognising how to support well-being for other LGBT plus members. And actually that also applies to some of the things I just said about my son, the neurodiverse and lots of those minority groups that will start becoming really important to recognise as leaders. I don't know if that actually answered your question, but I think...
No, it's really insightful. We, going back to that, making sure we include it in our thinking, in our approach every day. Obviously, we have changed our logo this month because it's Pride. But how can we make sure when it's the 1st of July, how can we make sure that we are really not just doing performative steps, but encompassing a diverse workplace?
So
quite a big question.
It is, no, but and I could probably do quite a short answer actually, Jess. I think gay washing or rainbow washing is so prevalent now that nobody pays any attention to it. If you're not standing up and saying, realistically, I know I'm not doing everything I need to do, but I need to do some things better. So in the next year, I'm going to commit just to do some small things, and every year commit to do those small things. That means more than changing a logo, than talking about EDI, than putting it on a poster. It's those absolute commitments and holding yourself to account. And I say every leader that's ever come to me to say, Barry, this is really difficult. I don't get it. I don't get these new terms. I don't understand these things. I think everybody in our community has to feel like part of a community. So as long as the conversation can start, this is a caveat from what I'm about to say, they've got a duty to come to you as leaders and colleagues and allies and say, this is who I am. I think all that they need really is for someone to just listen. If you can make a change, it might be about pronouns. You might not even understand what the change is, but if it's important to them, that's all you have to do. And you should be clear. I don't get it. I don't understand it, but I understand you get it. And I want you to know. I want to support you as an individual. If you just keep that simple thing in your mind, you can navigate this, what I find a very difficult minefield of kind of changing culture that the Gen Zs are putting us all through. Rightly, I mean, it's a challenge even for me some days, as I've said. But I do think it's that individual approach. You've just got to be prepared to listen. And if you can do that and make small adjustments for individuals, everything else will sort itself out.
Jill, one of our Skewbers, was saying it goes back to that you can't be what you can't see. I imagine for you, it must be so incredible for young professionals in the sector to come in and see someone like you in that leadership role, really kind of bringing your authentic self to the workplace and to all aspects of your life. Is there a weight that comes with that as well?
The responsibility piece. I sometimes have a terrible potty mouth. And it's for years of working in and out of construction sites, and I'm really bad. And I do find myself in meetings sometimes like, oh God, that's just slipped out. I think I feel more of a responsibility to act professionally in that context than I probably do about being myself. I think I've spent so many years arguing with people that I'm allowed to be myself that I've kind of got into a bit of a habit where that's normal for me. I think it's great that people would want to or could look up and see someone that might be in their future. I think that's powerful for them. But I actually feel as a mentor, I impact more individually. So I think you have to take the steps that you can take. I probably can't be all things to all people, but what I can be is a great mentor. So I do actively have mentees. I think that's a great relationship every leader should get into. I learned so much from the next generation that I just didn't even understand, and they provide a perspective and a touch point that for me is essential. So even when you're talking about clients and going externally, I have met Sashi and Bob Murray many times, but I think what I like about them is we all have that honesty. So if I don't know, I can just say, I don't know, but I want to know, and let's work on that together. And I think that's where the bit about mentoring and the bit about kind of visible leadership, I think is great, as you said, absolutely look up and see me there. But I would probably more be flattered if someone said Barry is a fantastic business leader than if he was a gay man leading a business. And I think that's where I would like to aspire.
And what other steps, we talk about mentorship and leadership, but in order to get that, not just sexual orientation, gender, ethnic diversity in that C-suite level, what other steps are important to you when we look at how we can create a more diverse sector?
So I think you also have to be quite real that the water sector is full of engineers. And currently engineers I think they make up about 82% of the leadership across or some silly stat I saw of the senior leadership team of some description. And I fall into that. And I'm fully aware of my privilege, and I'm fully aware of the ability I've had and the steps up that my background has given me. I think that it's quite important, and what's missing, to go back to what I would add, is social mobility. So I think if there isn't a strand already in your EDI program, people should be thinking about how do we bring in people who wouldn't naturally see us. So if you haven't lived in a family where your parents have not worked, and their parents might not even have worked, how on earth do you know how to do a CV? How on earth do you engage with an organisation like Skewb? How would you even know what the water sector does, other than the fact that, insanely like yogurts, you turn on the tap and it would be food grade quality? If we can't do those outreaches, if we don't put the volunteering in, if we don't focus on those things, we will never break that cycle. So that social mobility, inclusion, privilege piece, I think is how you would fix it. What Skewb will do about it, I'm not sure, but I think it's something that we'll be focusing on in our group. As we go, we have a lot to focus on, and as we transition over the next 12 months, heading for the big AMP, as AMP8 will be. But I think that's definitely on our timeline, and we'll be looking to see how we can achieve that.
As you're looking at AMP8 and AMP28, what am I saying?
No, AMP8.
AMP8, yeah. I'm trying to add in 28 because we also have Skewb 2028. So I'm merging my things. What excites you most about the changes that are still yet to come? You strike me as a man who embraces change. So
I do love change. Part of the reason I've come to this group at this time is I think that there's no way that water companies can do what they've done before. They've probably been about 70-80% internally delivered. I think just looking at the just basic numbers, I did some calcs on 4 of the big WASCs. They would need to swap that. So it would be kind of 20-30% internally delivered and 70% externally. And I think the gas industry and the rail industry have been better at this over the years, understanding their role in stewardship and trying to pass out some of that risk. I think that's where the industry is going to be. They're going to have to do that. The other thing, which I'm going to sound very geeky when I say that, the whole proper asset management piece that goes in gas is coming in water. Whether it's going to be this AMP or the next AMP, and I do think it's going to be this AMP, to meet the aspirations of the regulation, even over the short period, that's going to have to come. And it's been sorely lacking for 20 years. And I can't wait for the time I can run a spreadsheet out of a system and it tells me where my problems are. I think there's lots of complex
You're right,
reasons.
that does sound a little
It's a little geeky, and even at my level, I could envision the system, and I've been dreaming about it for 20 years.
I can't wait for this spreadsheet.
It'll be great. So it's. I think that is very exciting. I think it's going to be transformative in the way that we work, without even realising it.
Barry, I could talk to you for hours, but I'm very aware you have a train to catch. Final thoughts. We always love asking for advice from people with such a wealth of experience like yourself. It can be career related. We're in the early stages of creating our employee resource group. It can be inclusive related. Our Skewbers are listening to this. Do you have any final thoughts or advice to share with them?
I think if I'm approaching any business, and I've swapped around quite a lot, and I'm obviously a director of many at the moment, the one thing I ask every single person to think about if they ask advice or what should we be doing differently is a very simple question. Does it work for you? If you are in that situation, does the conversation work for you? Does it deliver what you want? Does it make the customers happy? Is it making you happy? But just does it work? And if it doesn't work, it needs a change. And I think if everybody had an embracing conversation about this isn't working for me, I need to go and talk to someone about it, you could transform your business without having consultants, without having people. There are a place for all that expert support, which is obviously why I'm here today talking to the team. But I think there are also consultants that sell those things that your team members know that themselves. And that cultural change that comes with them being empowered to make it is quite enthusiastic and exciting. So I do think if you're going to have any advice is ask yourself every day, is this working for you? And if it's not, what are you going to do about it?
Amazing. Thank you very much for your time today, Barry.
Thank you.